time to get started. Okay. Right, okay. Welcome to TechMeetUp. Thank you all for coming along. TechMeetUp is aimed at people who are interested in technology. There are no entry requirements. We are open to all. How many people are here for the first time? Wow. Why isn't there anybody here for the second time? TechMeetUp is run by volunteers, and we would be a bit stuck if we weren't helped out by our sponsors, who are Skyscanner, Cultivate, and Informatics Ventures. And if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have anywhere to go or anything to eat. So they are really quite wonderful. Should the fire alarm go off? I have no idea what it sounds like, but it's probably quite insistent and regular. Fire exit is there, go out it. Don't arse around. People die going to see, oh, I wonder where the fire is. There is a case in the Woolworths in Manchester fire. The majority of people died because they stayed in the canteen to finish their lunch. Okay, we've got two speakers tonight. We've got two speakers tonight. We're getting a talk on how to do email, which really is don't do it yourself unless you're really, really keen. And we're getting how Skyscanner is deploying more often, I think. So I have a question that I'll wait to see if it's explained in the talk first. Right, at these things we have a little introduction where everybody stands up and says roughly who they are, what they're interested in. If you've got any questions, I'm looking for somebody who knows about, I don't know, Let's Encrypt or whatever. So normally people stand at the edge so you can see everything. And people at the back, please speak up. You may think you're loud, but you're not. Okay, we'll start it off. I am Douglas. I know almost everything there is to know about barcodes. I helped to run this, and I'm looking for somebody who's done any work with Tizen, the Samsung thing.
I'm Alice from Skyscanner. I was going to ask how many people here for the second time so we can find the half-life of people that
Right.
But now I want to know what people were eating for lunch. It was so good they got plugged down to life. Anyway, I'm going to be talking later, so you've probably heard enough of my chit chat.
I'm Alex. I'm an Android developer at XDesign. I'm here to learn more about email.
So I just walked in, so I wanted to listen to a couple more of fun. I'm Michael. I'm here. I'm moving to Edinburgh in a couple of months, and to not be subtle about it, I'm looking for a front-end developer role. So that's why I'm here to learn about the email one. Sounds great.
I'm a massive geek and I'm here for some alcohol, to be honest. At the bank, excellent.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm a test engineer here at Skyscanner, and I work just down the room there and I can smell pizza. So not coming on. But I'm interested to find out about how to write emails. I've been wanting to learn for a long time.
Hello, I'm James Baster. I'm a developer who works on OpenTechCount and other things. I've just got my first open source patch accepted into Moodle. If anyone's got any tips for using that, that'd be cool to chat.
I'm Chris. I'm a full stack .NET developer. I'm here for the beer, pizza, and pretty much whatever is on talks.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm a software engineer at GB Group, and I do everything that's requested.
I'm Xavier, I'm a software engineer and I am planning to host my own email server, so, or maybe not.
Hi, I'm Niall, I'm an Android developer at BitLink, and we are currently hiring for Android and iOS developers, so if anyone's interested, then come let me know. And also, I'm also known for creating the My Edinburgh app for Android as well.
use that. I'm Rachel. I'm kind of one of the organisers of this. I'm also, I work for myself, but I'm a Google developer expert, and I'm interested to know, does anybody here, would anybody interested if we ran a Google I/O event in Edinburgh? Would anybody be interested in one? Okay. So, yeah. See what I can do.
Hey guys, hello, my name is Andrew. I have a small job opportunity, so I'll just hand out here, punt it out there. I run a small electronics company here in Edinburgh. Excuse me. Also recovering from the flu. And basically we make the electronics that firework and special effects companies use. So if you see like bullet hits or explosions on film and TV or big firework shows, you might be using our kit to actually fire all that stuff. Basically, we released a new product last year, and it's got a lot of traction in the industry, which is great, but our customers now want an application to go with it, which basically needs to help them write the automatic firing scripts. So basically, we're looking for somebody who can develop a fairly simple application that would run on Windows. It's language independent, and I guess kind of platform independent as well, but it must run on Windows. So, thank you.
I'm Rob. Also from the Edinburgh Hack Lab. We have some shoes tonight, so please come on.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm the principal developer at Cognitive Geology, which is a startup in the oil and gas sector.
I'm Graham. I am an Android developer at Betwing, and as Niall said, we are hiring at the moment, so if you're interested, come and chat us.
I'm Dave Taylor. I work for Standard Digital, and I'm interested in delivering business value as efficiently as possible.
I am Craig. I also work at Standlife. I'm really interested in continuous delivery, so I'm looking forward to what the talks about today.
Hi, I'm Alistair. I came last month for beer and pizza. This time I'm here for the talk.
Hi, I'm Bella. I work for a independent software development company. I'm being fixed it because Max wanted to say hello to people.
I'm Kate. I'm a product manager at Free Agent, and I've been working a lot on about like onboarding journeys and conversion rates. So come and talk to me about that. And I'm here to hear Alistair Hampton. Hi, Alistair.
Hi, I'm Joshi. I work with Navima. We're simplifying expenses, and we've got a small ask for anyone with an Android phone. If you would help us test a small plugin to improve our OCR algorithms. So you can either go to a site which is demo.navima.com/OCR.html. I appreciate it's a mouthful to remember. So you can either come and speak to me about it, we'd love your help, or Max, or James, and we'd love to get you involved to just help us improve this little part of our app.
Hi, my name is Max. I also work for Navima, and you can come to me with any technical questions about the program.
And how to get it.
Hi, I'm Random, and I'm a hack labber, and I do awesome.
I can't really follow that. I'm Amelia. I work for Standlight in digital department as well. So I suppose in the last year moved from doing 4 releases a year to 4 releases a week. So quite proud of that. But it seems like you're doing a bit better than us. So yeah, interested to hear a bit more about that.
Hello, my name's Jamie. I'm a lawyer and I work for a law firm that specialises in sort of tech startups. So if you want to chat legals.
Can I ask you please, do not sit on those tables, they do collapse. Thank you.
My name's Archie, I work for Amazon. I'm running a number of different teams in HR and recruiting, but software, design, front end, back end, machine learning. I'm hiring a company called.
Hi there, my name's Stephen. I work for a company called 77. I'm a developer. We do GIS, so mapping software, cross-platform running on iPads, Android tablets, Windows tablets, that sort of thing, specifically for utilities. So maps of pipes, cables, we're looking for developers, that sort of thing.
I'm Kyle. I run an API developer society. I'm a student. If you're interested in geeking
Android is atrocious. I'm a recent graduate of Codeline, which is the new boot camp coming out of the Lost House, so I'm obviously job hunting. Other than that, you probably need a bit more about that.
I am Daniel, also a Codeline graduate. I'm always interested to hear people in the tech world talk about what they know. I want to increase my skills. And having just graduated, I am keen for work. So if you are looking to hire on someone with 3 months of intense training to continue, come talk to me, not them.
Hi, I'm Ross. What he said. I'm Nick, another member of the Codeline crew. There's one more of us hidden in the crowd here, so you'll hear from one more. I'm currently knee-deep in Angular and also looking for a job.
I'm Tom. I work remotely for a startup in Berlin. We do lots of projects on data visualization and exploration. We're looking for JavaScript developers, but particularly anyone who's got an interest in open databases like Wikidata, MusicBrainz, Discogs, because we also look at timelines and music streaming.
Hi, I'm John. I'm a front-end web developer using Angular, working for a company who try and manage databases so people understand what's in them.
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm videographer, Counter-Strike casual player, and big fan of Apple Newton.
Hi, I'm John. I'm sysadmin. I work for Edinburgh. I'm here to support Gavin, who's giving one of the talks tonight, who is my boss, so you should be nice to him.
Hi everyone, my name is Marius. I'm an iOS developer. I'm one of the organizers of TechMeetUp, and I guess I'm here because I'm always here.
Go on, people in the middle now.
Hello, I'm Damodar.
Don't start in the
Hi, my name is Abraham. I'm new here, first time. Don't have any specification really, but I'm interested more in social media and content management. Thanks.
Go on, impress them.
So I'm Damodar, I'm a third-year student from Edinburgh University, CS student, and I'm looking for someone that has done chat applications, mobile chat applications. Thanks.
Stop pointing at people.
Hi, I'm Gavin. I'm giving one of the talks tonight. I haven't ruled out the possibility that this whole thing's one of my nightmares. We are hiring, I work for It Is On with John. We are hiring for a generalist web developer who knows Ruby and a front-end person. But just to ruin your day, Glasgow.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm an interactive design student at Edinburgh College, and I'm interested in furthering my skills in design, but also in development with app and web design for development.
My name's Ty. I'm a freelance IT admin programmer, jack of all trades. I have just handed on the flame from being the organizer of the talks for the Edinburgh Linux user group. I invite you all to come along, and if you want to have a scrap in front of the crowd there, please be my guest, let me know. Yeah.
My name is Peter. I'm here for the talk.
I'm Neil. I'm looking for a junior developer or junior tester role in Python, VBA, or SQL.
Hi, I'm Taika working with Standard Python and developer. I once did my own extremely crappy plan, so I'm here to see how it's done properly.
Hi there, I'm Mike. I work at Standard Life as well. I'm interested in chatting with people who have an interest or passions for sort of machine learning, data science, and all sort of tools and technologies around that space.
Hi Marty, I also work with Standard Life. I guess I'm a full-time wannabe techie and part-time philosopher and data scientist. So if you're interested in any of those, come talk to me.
Hi, I'm Tamaya. I also work in Style Life Investments. I work in risks, so know very little about technology, but I'm here to learn.
Hi, I'm Martin. I'm a .NET developer mostly. I work for an investment management company.
Hi, I'm Chloe. I'm actually a midwife, and I came with
My name is Charlie. I know Chloe because I used to be a midwife, but just recently resigned, and I'm looking for a job in this career, and I'm self-teaching myself C#. So if anyone's got any advice, it's much needed. So
Hi everyone, I'm James. I work for a company called Autorec. We do financial control so banks don't lose your money. We are looking for new team members at various levels, so come speak to me if you're looking for a junior full stack C#.
Hi, I'm Peter. I'm a front-end developer, and I like Angular and Node.
Hi, I'm Kidder. Here's your quote-unquote network.
Tim from Tusi, TUSI. If anyone has a smartwatch, an Android one, please try our app out. It's a text input one, and the beta went live recently, and we're desperate for users. TUSI, and it's really good. Or if it's not, tell us how to make it really good. The other thing is, a friend of mine runs a meetup. It's IoTEdinburgh.com, and the next one's 27th down at the glass room at Napier. And I'm not actually sure what it's on, but it'll be either drones, wearable tech, or IoT.
I'm David. I'm a Rails and Android developer, and I run a company called Craft Whiskey Club. So I'm self pussy.
I'm Stuart. I'm the fifth co-player, the independent one. Yeah, third meetup, so I'm starting to recognise a few of the beards. Just interested in the talks tonight, and yes, obviously.
Hi, I'm Sonny. I've got a startup based in an accelerator in Edinburgh. It's called iThere. That's I there. I've had a bit of problems with outsourced developers. They're in Poland, nothing wrong with Polish people, but they're in Poland. And I'm looking for maybe a full stack or a front end developers in iOS and Ruby on Rails.
I'm Tommy. I'm an IT student at Edinburgh College, doing website design. I'm there for the talks.
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm a hacker.
This is Tim Han. I work as a software engineer, and I completely talk.
Hi, my name is Suzanne, and I just quit my job a month ago.
Hi, I'm Anne. I design and manufacture jewellery, and I'm here at Edinburgh.
Okay.
We missed one step just here.
All right.
I'm Norbert, I'm a beginner web developer, and I'm interested in using technology for political and social purposes.
Okay, does anybody have any announcements? No.
Edinburgh Hack Lab is open every Tuesday night. For 6 to 11. Come along.
Any other announcements? Right. TechMeetUp is run by volunteers. We need people to help, because next month you're fucked, because I'm not going to be here, he's not going to be here, so you'll be staring at a screen with no pizza and no beer unless people step forward. So we've got 10 minutes and then we'll have our first talk on something or other, because I was at the toss but I've forgotten who won stroke lost. But there'll be a talk in 10 minutes, so go for a smoke, go for a wee, and then come back.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to be there for that one. And actually Bella just offered to help out. And we have, you probably know Denise, maybe, tech writer.
I'm pretty sure I know her, but
I'm pretty sure like she was one of the organizers. She had a baby, she that. I think so, yeah. Yeah. So she's back next month, and hopefully Mark might be around. Yeah, I know her holiday. But and we can order the drinks and the pizza. Okay. Should be okay.
yeah, I mean, it's just, if it was a really short maybe a thing, but
I didn't want to be there. I haven't really asked people what they feel about doing one. I'm sure this is a right. I haven't really managed to talk to Tony properly about it. Yeah, I'll be in tomorrow. So maybe
I'll be
yeah, I meant to come in today, but I've been wearing my motorcycle like clothes this morning, but like it's raining. So see what you say.
one nice thing about the game is
One of the really key problems to shaping what the range is being welcome. You need to put the key on its range.
Yeah, just use a shape.
I think she has
Okay, folks, it's time for the first talk. Grab a drink, grab a seat. Time to sit down. stop talking in the back, or I'll be bound to rap you in the knuckles with my ruler. That includes you at the back. Good. Sit down, please. Okay, our first talk tonight is by Alistair's can of Skyscanner, one of our wonderful sponsors. And it's about how they've upped their deployment rate by a factor of 100,000, which is not bad going.
Or how we'd like to. So, if anyone can't hear me at any point, just wave a hand. If I start talking too quickly, wave a hand. I've only pruned this down to 20 minutes, but I might be on the side of talking quite quickly. So, a quick intro to me. There's me on the left-hand side. I just finished my doctorate in machine learning. Generally speaking, I don't think I had a haircut for quite some time. Plus, when I'm stressed, I kind of pull my hair. That's me in the middle when I was running a small startup that I founded in travel search. That was bought by Skyscanner about 5 years ago. And that's me fairly recently. And the hair's kind of gone onto my face by that point. But that's kind of my thing. So kind of academic, founded a small startup, and then being at Skyscanner since it's been growing. This is like the visitors we've seen on Skyscanner over the last, 11 years. The two reasons I mentioned is one of which is the kind of the scale of the growth, and another thing which will come in be interesting at some point is you'll see the kind of jumps in the graph of the users. They each happen after December. Basically, in January, there's a big increase in the number of people who search for travel. So, just before Christmas, people are just focusing on Christmas. After that, they're like, oh, man, got to go back to work. This sucks. And then the biggest day of travel is basically the first day people are back at work and realise that their lives are miserable. And then they go around to searches and then make our lives miserable because then you have a big spike in traffic and some more traffic than you've ever seen before. The scale we're at now, every day 12 million live searches are run. We make 100 million requests to partners for data. They give us back about 5 billion quotes. We process them, filter them, serve them to our users. We also store them all on S3, and we sort of process that for doing interesting things for data science and predictions and understanding what sort of data there are. This is a pie chart of the breakdown of the company. The blue segment is engineering, so we're primarily a technology company, so being able to deliver software efficiently is critical to our survival. We're entirely powered by our own technology. Other competitors tend to be powered by other people, so if we can't ship software, we're screwed. It also means that engineers get to rule the company. So what I want to talk about is the way we've kind of released software over the years. So when I joined Skyscanner, we were releasing software about every 2 weeks, and to me that seemed okay, because I left a startup of 5 people, and we were releasing once a week. We were going up to a company of 50 or 60 people with 30 engineers once every 2 weeks. Seemed okay. I spoke to a competitor releasing every 6 months. That seemed pretty good to me. And this is a graph of how many releases we were doing each month over a period of time. So initially you'll see it was fairly flat around just over 2 releases a month every 2 weeks. You'll see some big dips. Well, those correspond to the Christmases we saw. So we were a bit scared about releasing software just before there's going to be a big spike in traffic. So we basically wouldn't release software then. Also, people are out of the office, but we'd have a feature freeze, and even after the spike in traffic, we want to make sure things were safe in January, embedded in before we released software again. You'll also see there's a trend of software releases getting slower and sort of fewer and fewer releases each month. And that wasn't just because I joined the company. It was also because there were some problems with our process of releasing software. And essentially what we had was a monolithic release process. It was a release train. And at the right hand, and if you want to know why it was getting slower, we need to look at how long it took to push out a release. So this isn't just the reciprocal of that graph, but basically this is the time between an integration environment closing, so you had to commit all your changes to int, and then running a big regression on the integration environment. Then we take that, there might be some bugs, and then you have to go back through that regression again. Then we have that candidate, we'd run a canary, so we release it to a subset of all our traffic, look at the metrics on that. It would take us potentially days to ascertain whether the metrics were okay, because there's a lot of change in this release. And then if it was, we'd roll it out to all the production. Sometimes it still wasn't okay. If it was really bad, we'd have to do a hot fix, which was super painful. Otherwise, we'd just start the release process again. So it wasn't fun at all. And what happened was that process of doing the regression and all the other things was taking longer and longer end to end. So if it, on the left-hand side, if it only takes 14 days to do that, you can release every 2 weeks. If it takes 50 days to do that, you release every 50 days. So this was ultimately why releases were getting slower and slower, wasn't because we wanted to release more slowly, but because the actual amount of time from closing that integration environment to having a stable release in production was getting longer. We used to name our releases. We had Muppet releases, and then we finished off with video game releases. The last ever release was a Super Mario Brothers character. I think there's two things to be drawn from this. Firstly, if you're doing so few releases, you're naming them. That's probably a bad sign. And the other one is if you're naming releases after Muppets, that's probably also a bad sign. So at peak pain, there was a lot of changes going on in each release, about 60 different changes. And so if something broke, which change was it? In that pre-release regression, about 10 defects we found, so you'd have to go back, make quick patches, rerun the regression. 21 days to get that whole process running, 125 days of human effort. So it isn't just one person, but like dozens of people working on this for that time. So it was a really bad place to be. And what did we decide to do? Well, we decided to move to doing continuous delivery. There were a number of changes we had to make. So that monolithic release was comprised a website and 2 separately deployable services that powered it. But essentially we broke that down into what's now over 100 different microservices. We changed the way we organize ourselves in teams such that there were teams responsible for each of those services who could operate independently, and I'll go into that a bit more shortly. And we had to set up that continuous delivery process. So what did that process look like? It was reasonably textbook. Essentially, there were, if someone made a commit for a release candidate, they'd push that into their continuous integration environment where some unit integration tests would be run. If that was successful as a gate, and we'd go through to an integration review environment, it was a bit more stable, less changes going on, again, integration acceptance tests. Before that, we go into a pre-production environment, so this is shared between different teams, more integration acceptance tests. If that's okay, we'll go into canary nodes for that service, so subset of production, run some smoke tests to make sure it wasn't completely broken, look at the metrics, if they're healthy, roll it out. And initially, every single one of these kind of pause buttons I've got there was a manual check or verification. So it wasn't just you committed your code, but actually to get it out the door, you needed to check at each stage. And over time, we got more mature and more confident, and so some teams would start, for example, pushing to integration review and pre-prods at the same time. And people started kind of automating things going to review, and eventually some squads started, some of our teams started automating rollouts to all nodes. So there was less and less of the manual testing, but sort of checking at each stage, but it was still like a pretty painful process getting all the way through. And in order to do this, as I said, we had to split ourselves up into lots of autonomous teams, similar to Amazon 2 Pizza teams, Spotify squads, sort of agile practice in many companies. I guess what was specific about our teams is that everyone would be able to have its own continuous delivery pipeline, so they could push out to production whenever they wanted to. They could run their own A/B tests, regardless of where in the stack it's at, whether it's a back-end service or a web client. And the teams set their own objectives and key results each quarter aligned with the rest of the company. They knew what KPIs were important for their service, which would enable them to make sure their canaries were healthy. So there's a big organizational change that happened at the same time, which there isn't time to go into, but it's a key part of this. It's microservices and continuous delivery and teams organized around services that enable us to make changes. So where did this get us up to? Well, this got us up to doing around sort of hundreds of releases a month. And that's a lot better than 2. And we're getting it out to about 0.5 on that graph earlier, so a couple of orders of magnitude improvement. But we started thinking about, well, where do we actually want to get to in this process? Puppet Labs have this report called a State of DevOps report. Essentially, they do a survey of people from lots of different software companies, really big companies of tens of thousands of employees, down to those with just a couple of employees, some in the United States, some in Europe, some in Asia. And they ask them about their deployment processes, how many incidents they're having, what their recovery times are, and for those non-anonymous entries, they look at the company performance of those companies, say how they're doing. And basically, they found that sort of high-performing IT organizations, as they classify them, do better as businesses as a whole. So they do better on the stock markets and in terms of growth and revenue and profit. And then if you look at the characteristics of them, they're deploying 30 times faster. Their lead times are 200 times less. So essentially, they're better at pushing out new products. 60 times fewer failures, and they recover 170 times faster. So it's a lot easier for them to roll back. And the reason I think this is because I think it's a positive cycle that goes on if you start sort of shipping more code in smaller releases. So basically, if you go down the right-hand side of the loop, you're making smaller changes. That's great for your customers because they can learn about things. It's easier to learn things if an interface changes in small bits than a complete change overall. They get new functionality earlier on, so they're happier. And it's a lot lower risk to make lots of small changes. It's easier to revert a change if it's just a small change than like 80 changes bundled together. And that means that the site's more available, which means both engineers and users are happier. And if you go down the left-hand side, basically, the more you automate, the more you're shipping, or the more frequently you're shipping, the more you have to automate, because you're almost just doing tedious tasks the whole time. And that means you also make fewer errors, because humans make errors. Repeated automated processes don't make errors, hopefully. And there's better instrumentation. If you need to know how your process is going, your release is going, you need to instrument things better overall. That means you're more confident in the releases you're doing, people are happier, you feel able to do more releases. So I think it's a positive cycle here, and that's what's kind of fueling these companies to be able to release more and more quickly. And there's other interesting stuff in that State of DevOps report, and it's worth a read. So where do we say we want to go to? Well, we say we want to get to 10,000 releases a day. And this figure is roughly along the idea that if we're moving to microservices, we've got 100 now, we'll probably get to 500 or 1,000 in the future. And at that point, making a change or a commit will probably make a change to maybe 2 or 3 different services. And if an engineer is committing once an hour, you've got 500 engineers, you get up to about 10,000 a day. It doesn't really matter if it's 10,000 a day or 5,000 or 15,000. I think it just completely changes the way you think about releasing software, because what's possible at much lower rates isn't possible at that rate. And so on the top, I've got our old continuous delivery pipeline with all the different steps. And at the bottom, I've got our new continuous deployment pipeline. And I should say in the context of this, we're moving to being completely on AWS. We're using Docker a lot more, and these are things that are helping us kind of even do this type of pipeline. But essentially, what happens with these new pipelines is every commit an engineer makes triggers an automated CI build. If that's successful, there's a code review requested. If that review's okay, then the pull request goes in, another CI build, an artifact is generated, a Docker container, and the trigger from that git commit causes a system that internally we call Slingshot to retrieve the container, deploy it out to nodes in production, automatically roll traffic out onto them incrementally, look at the metrics. If the metrics are good, rolls it out to all the production. If it fails, it rolls back. And the critical thing here is that the engineer is not involved in any bit of the process other than making a commit. So this is entirely automated. So every single commit is a release candidate and will make it to production unless it fails the tests in the container or the metrics on the canary aren't good enough. And that's one of the things you need to do. But obviously this changes a lot around what we're able to do. There's no pre-production environment anymore, which means you can't do any manual testing before release, which is a good thing, in my view. But it also means that you don't have other services to test off in a pre-production environment. So you're testing off the live version of other services. So you need to think more carefully about how you test and how you handle your dependencies and other people that are dependent on you. But I think the overall things it makes you do are generally good things, because it makes you have increased automation in your tests. But it is very opinionated. The team who built the first version of this system, this was kind of, they built it for themselves, and these are their kind of rules. Basically, it has to be testable itself, push to masters, push to prod, you have to cover it with your tests. Cyan is our blue-green testing framework. I hope you get the reference, and yeah, there's no pre-prod. Now, something else that's happened at Skyscanner over the years is we managed to get hold of all the technologies. And so that's what we have. And the reason for this Cambrian explosion of tech is, firstly, we decided not to be a .NET shop only anymore, and we're going to start using open source software. We bought various companies, they had different tech stacks, and our teams have a lot of autonomy, so they just brought in different technologies they wanted to use, and suddenly have this massive array of different technologies. To provide the type of tooling that we are with this sort of slingshot continuous delivery system, we're having to narrow down the tools we support significantly, because supporting that kind of framework for everything we do, and also some of the other really cool tooling that we're providing teams with now to just provide an awful, if you want to build, basically if you want to build a new service now, we provide lots and lots out of the box in terms of metrics and monitoring and throttling and rate limiting, so you actually focus when you're creating a new service on just writing the code that adds value rather than implementing all the stuff around the service that you normally do. But we can only provide that for a few stacks. So essentially, it's Python Flask or Python Tornado, Java Drop Wizard. We may do kind of a Node.js stack as well. It runs on Docker and it's on AWS, so much, much more opinionated than before. And I'm quite happy to have some debates later about pros and cons of being opinionated, and I think it's good references in terms of Google and Amazon and how they handle things like this. It also makes it easier for teams to contribute. So our engineering teams work in 8 offices worldwide. They're in highly autonomous teams. If they need a change made, if the other team are on the same stack, if it's easy to set up that other team's environment, if it all runs in Docker containers, it's more likely they can make a change to that team's stack, make a pull request, and then carry on with what they're doing rather than being blocked by a dependency of another autonomous team. So there are other fringe benefits that come with doing this type of thing. So where's this got us up to so far? Well, we're now doing about 2,000 releases a month. In February, we did just over 2,000 releases a month. So we're not up to 10,000 a day yet. I think the actual distribution of those releases is very variable. So there'll be some teams who are pushing out sort of hundreds of times a month, and others are still doing kind of it on the basis of 2-weekly iteration. So it's a very uneven distribution. And one of the nice things that's changed is that we no longer have that feature freeze at Christmas. Basically, teams can just carry on releasing. I mean, if people are on holiday, they won't be releasing code, but essentially, we no longer do that feature freeze anymore. And we just let people release code as and when they want to and independently. It was really hard for me to even get the data on how many releases we did in February, because we don't have a named releases anymore or spreadsheets listing them, and it turns out our production changelog doesn't contain all the changes in production. But anyway, so basically I had to basically get a spreadsheet and get everyone to basically say how many releases did you do this week, this month. I'm hoping to automate that in the future. So where have we got up to? So I plotted it on a log scale now to make some sense. So basically we started off about 2 a month. Initial continuous delivery got us up to like the hundreds. Continuous deployments got us into the thousands a month. If I can extrapolate, then maybe end of 2016, beginning of 2017, we'll get to 10,000. I'm pretty confident we'll be in that ballpark, because there is this inertia here that even the teams that are getting up to doing like 20 or 30 a week are on a track to do 60 or 70 quite quickly, because there's other things that need to change as well as the tooling. It's the mindset of actually every commit you make, making small commits that are deployable each time. So it's not just having the tooling and the pipelines to do that, but it's also like the mindset of doing it. And then I guess the final thing really is that with this whole cycle, you can start getting loads and loads of feedback on your product, but ultimately the rest of the business needs to be able to keep up with that level of feedback. So whilst it's really good from an availability perspective and reliability and happiness, you need to be able to actually make decisions that much more quickly. So there's then a pushback to the rest of the products team and the strategic management. Essentially, we're getting lots and lots of data and lots of insight on each of these releases we're doing, running lots of experiments. Can we actually move as an organization as a whole to handle this faster rate of change overall? So yeah, that's me. I'm very happy to answer questions.
That's an awful lot of numbers of releases. How many product lines does it cover?
How many product lines does it cover? That's difficult. What's a product? Maybe 5 or 6. So we have basically flights, hotels, car hire, and we have B2B offerings. So we have a B2B white label that like powers Lonely Planet, and B2B APIs that power stuff from Microsoft. So I guess maybe half a dozen product lines, and then within those maybe on average 20 services each. So it's more microservices than product lines. Well, the question was about I guess if we assume we're talking about disastrous failures that we create rather than data centers going down and that sort of thing, then it really varies. We have blameless postmortems every Thursday morning, 9 AM till 10 AM. People present what they do. The time to detection on these incidents varies a lot. The fastest ones will be like 6 minutes for a major incident. Some of them can take longer. It really depends how well the metrics are set up. Are we monitoring the right things and things like that? And I mean, our availability is getting better, and our time to detection is going down, and our time to resolution goes down. But yeah, we still do have incidents.
So my question is not so much that you have them, how do you deal with them? Because it's like as a big company in South Africa, you have so much resource compared to people that don't. What trick of the trade do you figure out once something has been caught? What's the best way to do it?
So if you understand the question, like, once something's been caught, what's the best way to deal with it? I guess it really depends on what happened. Like, if it's due to a change, then we can roll back quite easily. Hopefully it isn't due to a change because your canary metrics would have picked up something that's completely broken. So typically it will be due to some like bug or edge case that's been detected. And then the number of ways the number of things that could be is absolutely enormous. I can't begin to explain all the different like triggers that would be. And as I say, we have these. We share our learnings in the company, so basically I can sit down with you for an hour and basically tell you like what the reason was for all different incidents, but they're very varied. How do you figure it out?
No, it's like if you can't figure it out, because certainly I haven't managed to figure it out, it's just been a lot better. Everyone else in the group. Something goes catastrophic, it's basically how do you get it done? How do you sort it in any way, shape, or form?
I can't fully hear you, but like, so if it's catastrophic.
All we're saying is that there is no right way to fix something when something happens. You just have to fix it.
Yeah.
No matter how many processes, that's it.
Yeah, but I guess you have to. You're right. There is no standard way, but like for example, you can switch off a data center and switch traffic to a different one, or maybe you were able to turn off a service and stuff. So there'll be some standard patterns, but yeah, diagnosis of issues is widely varying. If you can't just roll back, if you can't just switch over a data center, it's going to take an arbitrary amount of time to resolve an issue. Alex?
Have you managed to completely eliminate manual testing?
Not in the teams that are using the continuous delivery pipelines, yes. And elsewhere, there's a little bit of manual testing going on. It tends to happen in a pre-prod environment, but we made pretty the home page, the flights results pages. They're using like continuous delivery processes without any manual testing. The release candidate goes out at 8 AM automatically on the clock every morning, for example, for those because they haven't used the continuous meets a new platform yet, so they're just doing daily releases. We made heavy investments in like using Selenium Grid, made some changes to that we'll hopefully commit back to the main project. So there's lots and lots of automated cross-browser testing, and we also use Source Labs for that as well. So we haven't entirely eliminated it, but there are multiple front-end squads serving like homepage levels and traffic without any manual testing going on, but there is some manual regression.
Is there manual testing before pushing to master?
Before pushing to master, I wouldn't say so. I think it tends to happen in they'll like be in kind of more like integration environments or pre-product.
How did you form your opinions around those sort of cool technologies?
I guess there's two things. So I think when it comes to like picking a set of technologies, I guess it's about what are the different types of jobs you need to solve and having a tool that solves each of those. See, it would have been useless if we'd said, like, okay, with Python and Ruby, because they probably solve similar jobs to each other. Whereas, so I guess it was initially defined by what types of workloads do we have? Do we need something that's kind of quick scripting, dynamic prototyping? Do you need something to run a web service at scale and that sort of thing? And then it's complex with factors like what frameworks are available, and how easy it is to hire people, and the skill set people already have, and to a limited extent what investments we've already made in technology. And like it may be actually we start doing a whole bunch of Node and we haven't got that much Node at the moment, but we just think there are certain benefits to doing like having the same stack kind of client side and server side and that side of things. So a lot of factors that go into this, but I think the main thing is like having an opinion of like there's just that trying to keep it constrained and only kind of adopting new technologies when there's a problem you haven't a shape of problem that you can't solve with your existing stack. And if it's only a marginal benefit of switching from one thing to another, the pain that you see later on, in my opinion, of someone's left that team and then something breaks and actually no one's ever written in Go before and it's a really quirky thing that happens in Go, then you soon realise that component that's written in Go, whilst it was a much smaller bit of code, has actually caused a P2 incident and the team didn't know how to fix it and had to get back and get that developed. So I think there are lots of fringe benefits.
How frequently do your commits in your continuous delivery environment fail, and then how is that fed back to the developer?
I don't know statistics actually, and I don't think there's anyone from the team in here tonight, so I don't actually know. I believe there's basically a dashboard that the developer can see to inform them. I don't actually know the ranks.
So I'm thinking about user interface changes that can affect how well the website performs in terms of people buying your product. But both versions would completely pass all the tests. So if something gets released that really doesn't work in terms of customers using it, how do you then monitor that, know which bit of change affected the customers and what to roll back, what to introduce further?
Sure. So I think there are two things we do that are super similar, but they just operate on different time scales. So the canary release and the blue green deploy is the software doing what it's meant to? Is it fundamentally broken or not? Is it going to really break some metrics? And the sample sizes using that are pretty small. We'll then typically for a feature be running an A/B test or a whole series of A/B tests. What typically happens is you have an initial experiment and then lots of variance in that experiment. So we kind of separate out those two things. So that unfortunately, like an experiment typically won't make a massive change in things, whereas breaking software will. So after you've done that canary process, you then go to A/B testing, and then different variants of that. There'll be like a group who don't see the feature, groups who see different variants of that feature. We'll look at key metrics for that feature, like how many people click out to buy things, how many people actually buy things in partner websites. We'll look at those things and decide if it's a feature we want to keep or not. Those things typically run over the order of days, whereas a canary may be tested for about 10 minutes because we're looking for much larger statistical variations.
Yeah, it's just interesting because one thing might, if you release 1,000 things in one day, it's hard to know what caused what.
Yeah,
so different locations, different users.
So yeah, it's a well-studied area, like running lots of tests in parallel. And what most people tend to do is they tend not to worry too much about conflicts between tests. The A/B test will probably be running on a small subset of traffic, and I guess we try and make sure that there isn't interference between tests where we know, like, if it's a particular view, we'll try and make sure there aren't clashes on tests within that particular view. But yeah, because it's a subset of traffic, you can have multiple A/B tests running at a particular time, and you can have multiple canaries running at a particular time. And then we have quite a standardized framework for doing that A/B testing, so you can see all the other tests that are going on, how they're performing, etc.
Are the contracts between the microservices self-documenting, and how often do they change?
I wouldn't say this. They're not self-documenting. And how often do they change? Breaking changes are rare. So because a lot of APIs are consumed by a lot of different teams, and so making a breaking, not typically, if there's a breaking change, we'll actually go to a new version, and go to new versions are relatively rare. In terms of small changes in APIs that are non-breaking, it's hard to generalize across 100 different services. I'd say these things maybe happen on the order of like months and things like that. So I'd say it's more typical, like new services will be created or a change made to enhance the quality of the results of that service or its performance, not necessarily adding new fields the whole time. And typically, it will be localized to a particular product, so that that service will know its main customers and be able to sort of look at the changes in it.
So the API is designed up front, or do they evolve continuously?
Well, there's initial design, but they'll evolve as like use cases change. So yeah, so they kind of, and they keep moving back. So say we try to, at least when we're trying them up front, we have a view of where things are going, so that we're not just going to make a breaking change the next day. So we're thinking about, well, what sort of fields are we going to be needing? What sort of responses do we need? And the rest. And obviously for like external APIs, we've got business customers to support. We've got native apps to support. So those you can't make breaking changes very often. Archie.
I saw in the tech stack you lost a bunch of kind of systems and search options like Postgres and Lucene and Elasticsearch. So what's your replacement there? And then a secondary question around the systems is, how do you handle kind of data migrations? Kind of forward-moving.
Okay. So the slide was slightly cheeky, and we do still have databases. So I guess there's consolidation going on there. So like we've got Solar and Elasticsearch. I'd like us to just get to Elasticsearch. Generally speaking, if there's an AWS hosted version of something, we will use that. So we'll use AWS hosted Elasticsearch, or if it's Postgres, if it's a relational database, we'll try and move people to Postgres, but we'll try and move people to Postgres or RDS. If it's key value, it's typically been couch-based, but we're now moving people to like DynamoDB or Elasticache. So basically, interestingly, like the AWS version of technologies is kind of becoming the reference. So that's kind of where we're migrating. So we are consolidating down on the database technologies. In terms of persistence and these changes, or certainly the Slingshot continuous delivery system works for Lambda as well now, which it didn't initially, but our customers internal customers wanted it. In terms of persistence, the Slingshot process doesn't make change, isn't used to say create a DynamoDB instance or to add indexes and things like that. So that still happens out with the process, but the vast majority of change we do is to the software rather than to like data structures and schema changes and things like that. So we now in the teams that do have a lot of databases, they have on the whole moved to continuous delivery. Some of them, when they've got like large, fairly static databases, they can build all their databases from scratch. They build canned data, so they can run like unit tests and regression tests and all the rest. So there's quite a lot of automation there. But some of our databases, they contain sort of terabytes of data and indexes and other things, and we just can't just kind of like build a new one of those from scratch. So there we have to like make more incremental changes and actually work out diffs and things like that. So as always, the database is kind of the tricky bit.
Right, we'll have to call a halt there.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, there'll be a 10-minute gap, so you can do whatever for the email talk.
Your holiday is not couple days.
My medication's worn off. I'm starting to fall asleep.
Huh? Are you falling asleep?
Yeah. And given that my boss is giving the next talk, it's not a good time to doze off.
You could always go at the bathroom. Or maybe not.
I feel really bad about this. When the last talk that Matthew gave at Scott Rug before he vanished, I hadn't yet discovered that I needed medication. I just fell asleep right at the back, in the middle, at the back, snoring.
Was I there?
Probably.
Well, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
I felt it was free. I felt very bad about it.
I think I was there, but I don't.
I felt very bad about that because his talk wasn't boring.
Streaming, yeah?
No.
Because now, with streaming something like this, the second streamer, Not yet, but sometimes I know it runs on. My friend doing something DIY. Sometimes he's showing how to assemble tables and
or any of the other things like products. I think thanks to everybody thanks for the
No,
course, directly. So
Okay, folks, time to sit down again for the second talk. Yes, that includes you at the back.
Right, everyone, can everyone have a seat, please?
We need a big ruler. Sit down, please. Time to let somebody else talk. It's only 20 minutes and interesting. Okay, right. Second talk tonight is about email for developers, and I present Gavin Montague.
Hello. Thank you for having me. My name's Gavin Montague. I'm Gavin Montague on Twitter. If you have any questions, general abuse, comments, etc. I work through in Glasgow for a company called...
Can you speak up?
Sorry?
At the back, please.
Okay. I work through in Glasgow for a company called Edinburgh.
A little bit louder.
If you like us, we are local commerce. We put out daily deals for local businesses to our membership, a daily email. People buy it, everyone likes us. If you don't like us, we're Groupon but pink. And we send a lot of email. About 80% of our traffic comes in response to the emails we send to our membership each day. This is a section of our postfix logs for 7:30 in the morning a couple of weeks ago. Each ping in the middle is one of our emails being successfully received by a foreign server, so total count at the bottom. That's a relatively high amount of email. In total, 600k to 1.2 million a day. That's a mixture between bulk email, so that's emails to people who have signed up to receive our daily list, transactional email, so receipts, email vouchers, password resets, welcome emails, a different channel. So over the past couple of years, we've learned a reasonable amount about how to send email. I won't be covering anything about style sheets, front ends, building, design of email in this talk. That's a whole different set of voodoo. Just go to Email Standards Project if you want to find out how to suffer the least. There's no nice way of doing email for HTML clients effectively. So what I'd like to cover is a short list for what you ought to be doing when you're trying to send email from your app. That's not a great title, so for the BuzzFeed people, narrow it down to one weird trick for managing your own email infrastructure. It's a massive pain, and almost regardless of what your app is, your site is, no one's using it because of the email you send. It's just not, it doesn't feature. Like with sysadmins, people only care when things go wrong. So no one's going to join your app because of the great password reset email you send. People will leave your app because they can't reset their password, or they don't get the confirmation email, or everything's ending up in spam all the time. So the easiest way to do it is just to let someone else do it. If you host stuff on Heroku especially, there's plenty of third-party services that just expose either an SMTP server with authentication or a web API. Fire emails to them, you're done with it, let them worry about all the trouble, and you're done. You can leave. But there's a good case for managing your own email, particularly because these people here, Mandrill, decided to end of life their product a couple of weeks ago, and there was a great big Twitter storm of people saying, this is disgusting, your free product that I've been using for years is ending. Don't you realise Heroku, click change service provider, and it's done. Beyond that, you might decide you want to manage your own email because of cost. At a certain volume, all of these people cost money. You might want to manage it yourself because you feel you're giving up too much control. Ultimately, if you break some term of service for these people, they can cut you off. You give up the ability to do stuff. That said, it's often a good thing to do and just let someone else do it. If you absolutely must run your own email server, it's pretty simple. So we run Ubuntu here, so just install Postfix. It'll ask you one question: what do you want to send as? Okay, let's just install a little library so we can talk to our email server. Send an email, done. Cool. Email is not a particularly nice system. The reason it's not a particularly nice system is because it's from a simpler time when we didn't have scary people on the internet. Email by itself has no form of authentication. You can't trust who you're sending to. This is why we have spam. In order to send an email pretending to be someone else, at base level, you send an email as someone else. You change the front header and it will show up in an email client. Without any of the stuff we go into, we'll just say this is this person. So we're just going to run through some of the things that you ought to do, because over the years, ESPs have evolved this hodgepodge system of slapped together protocols and tricks and other things that they do to determine if the email that you're sending to their server is legit or not. So before you send any email at all, you have to go through pre-flight. So you're spinning up a new server that you're getting from somewhere. Is it a shared IP address? If you're still sending email from shared IP addresses, don't. Because the problem is that the IP address, you're inheriting the reputation of everyone else who's currently using it. If someone else is sending spam, you're sending spam, regardless of how legitimate your email is. What's the IP address of the sender? You're blacklisted. Everything from that IP address gets blacklisted. You're giving up too much control. If you're on an IP address that you own, the chances are someone else owned it before you. So you need to check if the IP address has previous reputation. So go to Spamhaus, Hotmail, Postmaster Tools. There's a list. You do the rounds and you check to see if there's a bad reputation associated with that IP address. If there is, what we tend to just do, so we run Rackspace Cloud. If we spin up a new instance and we find it's got a bad reputation, we just leave that box sitting, spin up a new one. If that's got a bad reputation, spin up a new one. We just hold on to all the old IP addresses, keep holding them until we get good ones so that we don't accidentally get one of the old ones recycled. And then we just start working on the fresh IP address, because it is possible to get an IP address that's been blocked by, say, Microsoft. They ask for DNS records, etc., etc. It just takes too long. Get rid of it, just bypass it. Also want to make sure that you've set up your Postmaster rat and abuse addresses. They will come in handy later. If you're sending email from a domain that's actually also managed by whoever's doing your internal IT, you want to let them know. If you're wanting your web app, say, to start sending bulk email and you also have an Exchange set up, you're going to have issues with authentication. Speak to the other people and let them know we are going to be setting up authentication for this domain. So, who here doesn't speak HTML? Okay. The way you learn HTML is you go to a web page, you view source, and you read it. That's the way everyone learns HTML. And for email, it's the same thing. So the most important email in the world, someone likes me. In an email client, you can always view source and get the headers. The whole story of why you got the email is in here, and it's worth at least having a passing familiarity with what some of the headers mean. So the first thing we'll want to set up, we'll refer back to this specific email, is you want to set up the RDNS of the box you're sending from. So Normal DNS control rests with the person who owns the domain. As someone who owns itis.com, I wish I did, I can point the records for that anywhere. RDNS is the PTR record. It works differently. With that, what's happening is the person who actually owns the IP address, the ISP, can assign our name to that IP address. Why this is important is most ESPs will reject email if the reverse record for a domain name does not match the sending domain. So if I spin up a box on Rackspace, by default, its reverse DNS will be cloud123456789 rackspace.something. If I try to send email as itis.com from that box, the email will go out to Yahoo. Yahoo look at the email, says this email is coming from itis.com from some IP address, do the RDNS lookup, oh, it's a Rackspace box. Itis.on have no authority over this, and the email will be dumped. That shows up in the header. You can see the spam source. So this email from LinkedIn, what's the IP address that it's sent from? What host is it purporting to be from? You can just do a quick lookup on the command line. It points to so the purported sending domain has reverse DNS that points to the same domain. Right? That IP address doesn't. So what used to be more common with botnets is someone's Windows machine would be taken over, it would start chugging out spam. So ESPs will just reject email from IP addresses that either don't have a valid lookup or the lookup doesn't match. Which takes me to the next point, which is particularly cogent. Don't use IPv6. The only ESP who does anything with it is Google, and they just use it in ways to annoy you. So if you look in Stack Overflow, you'll see this question appearing a lot lately, because while most big hosts, when you set up a box with them, they will give you an IPv6 address. No one remembers to configure it properly, no one sets up DNS for it. Email from IPv6 addresses that don't have a valid reverse DNS entry, and no one remembers to set it up. So we use Postfix. The easiest thing to do is just tell our mail client, our mail transfer agent, don't use IPv6. It saves yourself a world, it saves your world of hurt. And almost everything to do with IPv6 and the internet is, well, we think it does this. You get no bonus points for using it, it just makes your life harder. Almost in all cases, you can get away with just using IPv4. The next thing you want to do is make sure your SPF records are set up. Now, Central Policy Framework is to do with authenticating that the envelope's return address is authenticated for the domain. That's a terrible way of phrasing that. So, in the email that comes in from LinkedIn, you've got received SPF, which says it's passed, right? Which says this IP address is authorized to send from this massive long email address. What people get wrong with SPF generally is it's not about authenticating the from address. The from address is messages no reply at LinkedIn. That's not the SPF record. The SPF record's validating this return path address. The return path address is what gets sent to if the email can't be delivered. So you set up an SPF record, and what this will do is it stops people sending email with your domain name as the return path. If you've ever got spam bounces, I think they're called JoJobs for some reason, you get spam bounces that say this email couldn't send to somebody or other and it's been returned to you by mistake. The reason it's been returned to you is because your email address was set in the return path. So, super easy to set up an SPF record because it is just a record. You just have to enter a DNS record, a text record. So for LinkedIn, they publish this SPF record, which says it's SPF version 1, and it's just a range of IP addresses, IPv4, blah, the formatting in this, the coloring's went weird for some reason. Blocks of IP addresses also MX records and MX records from the domain DocuSign.net, which is presumably someone who they send email through. So when LinkedIn go to send email to someone, the recipient email system goes, okay, well, you're sending from 1234. I will look up to see if LinkedIn have an SPF record. Yes, they do. Does that IP address appear within the ranges expressed here? Yes, it does. Pass friend. If it doesn't, there's a little twiddle at the end which says tilde. I think that says, what's the syntax for that? That says if there's a soft fail, so if there's a fail, do bad things with the email. Mark it as spam, reject it. The control goes in the recipient's domain. So the other thing we want to set up on your new email server is DKIM. So domain key identified email, which is a bit more advanced but is a lot more thorough. This actually allows you to verify the sender in an email. So again, the story's in the header. This email has a DKIM signature. It's talking about some sort of hashing method. It's got a domain name. It's got this thing here, the S, the selector, we'll talk about that, and then it's got a list of headers and what look like two hashes. So what domain keys do is, as the email is leaving your system, the linter looks at the email, it looks at a private key in your system, and it calculates a couple of hashes. I'm going to skip the exact details because then I can pretend that I can remember what the fields that get hashed are. But the gist is that it signs the email in the same way that public-private keys work. You then publish. You then publish the public key as part of your DNS records. So you send an email that's DKIM signed. The recipient system looks at it, goes, okay, this has got a DKIM signature. It builds the DNS selector out of the fields in the header. It calculates the hash. If the hash matches, that means two things. One, the person who owns the domain name, or who has control of the DNS for the domain name, did sign the email, because they're the only person who's got access to the private key. It also means, less importantly, that the contents of the email wasn't faked. It's not been altered. The hash is calculated generally from the from field, the body field, a few other headers. So if someone took a DKIM signed message, changed the body, and tried to pass it off as their own, the hash wouldn't match. Which means the email comes to the recipient server looks at it, sees the hash doesn't match, and takes an action on it. The problem with both those things are you're very much giving control to the recipient email system. Not everyone uses DKIM, not everyone uses SPF. There's this very grey area about what should happen to a message that fails to pass a test. You might think you've got DKIM set up, you might think you've got SPF set up, you spin up a new server, it's incorrectly configured, you start sending email from it, and it's going into a black hole. So the next thing you want to set up is DMARC, domain-based message authentication, reporting and conformance, which I'll just use a stolen image for. So DMARC allows you, as a domain name owner, to set policy for what should happen. It defines that an email passes DMARC if either there's an SPF record that's valid and matches, or there's a DKIM header that passes. If either of those two criteria are met, DMARC is passed, pass friend, the email is considered valid. If both fail, the email is invalid. Why that's different? Yeah, LinkedIn, DMARC pass. Why that's different is, like with SPF, like with DKIM, this is controlled by publishing a DNS record, but what you get to do with this is, as the person who owns the domain name, you get to set the policy. You can specify whether emails that fail DMARC should be quarantined, which is normally go to spam or rejected outright. You can also set a percentage of your email that you want to suffer from demarc. So you can start spinning it up gradually to see whether or not it's succeeding. And the most important part is you get to specify 2 addresses. I can't remember which is which here. This is the forensic address, rough, and this is the aggregate address, RUA. So what happens with those is, when messages fail to pass demarc, the ESP is meant to gather the results for them and then send a report to the aggregate address. The aggregate reports are awful. It's just XML that goes on forever. So the best thing to do with that is you go to Postmark, who are one of the email service providers from earlier. You sign up to their free service that takes all of the demarc aggregate records, reports, and sends you a nice weekly report of how you're doing. So we get in one of these for our domains once a week. It will show us, is anyone pretending to be us, or have we got any misconfigured servers? Ideally, all of our email will be a trusted source. We'll have no failures. You'll occasionally get 1 or 2 failures because, oops, we misconfigured a box, or someone's ESP is doing weird things. But by and large, that's the way to tell whether or not you've got DKIM and SPF enabled. I'll go through the rest very quickly because I think we're running. Warming up. You can't put a box online, start sending email from it, even if everything else is perfect. If you spin up a new box and start sending email to Hotmail, for example, after the first 200 messages, it'll just blacklist you straight away. Yahoo's always the same. So what you need to do there is, if you have need for an email box in a week's time, you have to spin it up a week in the past, and then start gradually sending email to it. This can be quite difficult if you don't have control over your email channels. If you just have one big pipe that you send all your email through, it's awkward. You ideally want some method of filtering between your bulk email, your high value email, your transactional email, so you can send 1% of your email or 2% or however much is acceptable through this new server. Over the course of about a week, ESPs will start realizing this is a legitimate server, and you can start upping the traffic to it. So the issue here is, if you're getting sudden spikes of traffic, normal pattern of use for a web server is you spin up a web server there and then, deals with the traffic, and then you can get rid of it. That's not really possible with email, because so much of what happens is based on the reputation of the IP address. If an IP address suddenly starts sending email, it'll be rejected by and large. So that's set up. Not done yet though, because now you have to worry about upkeep. I'll go through this super fast, and then hopefully at the end, if anyone has any questions, address them directly. All the big ESPs have tools for registering for what are called the feedback loops. If you register with a feedback loop and you're in Gmail, for example, you get this type of link in Gmail. There's equivalent in Hotmail, Yahoo, etc. They are considered more trustworthy than unsubscribe links inside an email, because what's the conventional wisdom? Never click on an unsubscribe link in an email, because that just lets people know that the address is active and it gets more spam. So the wisdom is, this is a link that's provided by Gmail, thus is legitimate, thus people will click on that rather than marking your email as spam, so they never see it. All you need to do to opt into that basic level is you provide a header called list unsub, and you provide either an email address or an HTTP link. And at some point in the future, if someone clicks unsubscribe from this email in Gmail, Hotmail, etc., a ping is sent to one of those 2 addresses. You can then aggregate those results, take action, unsubscribe a user, don't send them any more email, do something. If you don't do something, then the ESPs will mark you down, because you're ignoring the requests for people to leave your list or leave your email channel. MSN, AOL, all the big ESPs have extra tools. They vary in quality, they vary in what you give, what they give you. But for example, our largest single domain on our list is Hotmail. So it behoves us to get as far deep into the Hotmail junk reporting programs as we can, so that we get good data. Are people marking our email as spam? Hopefully not. Are people trying to leave our lists? But if they are, we want to take an action on it. If you sign up for all these tools, which unfortunately they're almost all got captchas on them, can't be done automatically, you get extra reports about, are your IP addresses being blocked, are people marking you as spam? If you're handling a high amount of traffic, it's worth considering. If you're getting bounces, you don't want to keep sending them. Bounce to those addresses. Bounces come in two categories, hard and soft. Hard being, this email address does not exist, this domain name does not exist. If you get one of those, you should stop sending. That address is never going to be valid. Soft bounces are in the category of, this email address is full, the email server appears to be offline, etc. What we do there is we've got some little scripts that aggregate from our logs. If an email address has 2 hard bounces, we don't send it anymore. If an email address has 8 soft bounces within a period of time, we stop sending to it. And that just means we're not pestering the SPs with emails that they're clearly not able to process. We'll skip that. User tracking. You can use Google Analytics in your email. You just have to use the super old version, which effectively puts a tracker pixel in your email. The reason this is useful is if email leaves your system and is marked as delivered in your postfix log or your XMLs, whatever, that doesn't mean the person saw your email. It's not uncommon for it just to go into a black hole after it's been received, because if someone's sending spam, you don't want them to know that it's getting spam, that you've picked up in the fact that it's spam. So we've got a system whereby we use Google Analytics to mark our various outbound servers and to see what the open rates on them are. Is email from this server being delivered better or worse than this other server? And you can see here, all about 14% apart from this one. So given an equal distribution of outbound email, why is email from this server less likely to be opened? And it turns out the reason is Virgin Media completely changed their email setup and turned their spam filters up to DEFCON was the last one, incorrectly, and blocked most, like they just blocked swathes and swathes of IP addresses and then reversed the decision about a week later. But the emails from our side were being received by Virgin Media. They were being accepted, but people were never seeing them. Because people were never seeing them, they were never opening them. Because they weren't opening them, the tracker shim wasn't being pinged. We can see that in Google Analytics and we could take action on it, which otherwise we couldn't do. You should test yourself for spam. It's trivial to set up and install, say, Spam Assassin. You and whoever it is who writes copy for you should run emails through Spam Assassin, because in addition to all the rules that you think are probably there, mentioning Viagra, mentioning porn, there's rules in the Spam Assassin corpus which are things like, is something emphatic in the subject? I don't know what that means, but I guarantee that if you've got a copywriter, they will write best ever sale, greatest sale, buy now in the subject of your email. It's not going to kill you, but the way the spam detection systems work is it's death by 1,000 cuts. You've made this one mistake, and this one mistake, and this one mistake in your copy, and it's enough to trip. This last bit is just for John. As I mentioned before, you can't just spin up a new box and start sending email. The common pattern for web apps is you've got some sort of front-end load balancer that takes web traffic, the app servers process the web traffic, and what's normal is that web servers will normally also send email. So a password reset request comes in, that box there will just start sending the email out, which is cool as long as you set up all of those things for all the boxes. At the point where you get a load of traffic and you have to spin up a new box, that you'll forget. Even if you do remember to set up the first, well, the 4 of the things there, it will take time to manually configure feedback loops, and it takes time to build up reputation. So instead, what you want to do, if you're serious about email, is set up a gateway. So basically an outbound load balancer for your email. It's pretty trivial to do in Postfix. You just tell all your app servers, don't deliver email to internet. Relay your email through some sort of effectively static gateway. In the same way, if you've got a complex setup, your database servers are effectively static. You don't scale those up and down because they're a persistent source of data. You don't scale your email gateways up and down because what you're trying to do is build up a good reputation associated with a small number of IP addresses. Skip that. That's about it. Apologies for overrunning, and as I mentioned at the start, we're hiring front-end people and generalist web development to work in Glasgow. Thank
you. Questions? No.
So, go back to the beginning of your book, but if you are in a situation where you've got a bad IP address and your mail's just being dropped on the floor,
yeah.
Is there any way of telling?
It depends. Because your email can be dropped in different ways, if you look through a postfix log, you'll occasionally see rejected, this IP address this IP address will not be delivered. Some ESPs just don't do that because they don't want the spammer to know that the email is not being delivered, because then the spammer moves. Some of them will accept delivery and then just black hole the email. There's no real way to tell that unless you have a baseline of traffic. So if you know that your emails normally get a click-through of 10% and your email suddenly gets a click-through of 3%, then you can infer that if all the emails were delivered as normal, if the content of the email didn't suck, then somewhere along the line people aren't seeing that email. So at that point it becomes a bit, well, you've got a baseline, we know something's happened. You look at the logs, but because the logs don't say that your email is being blacklisted, you can't guarantee that it's not being blacklisted.
Having spent 20 minutes laboriously telling us all these wonderful myriad steps you have to go through, and how it's all kind of evolved, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Is there any industry consensus or momentum to improve this situation, or
it's terrible, it's an awful way
continuous improvement, we can do better?
No, the only thing you can really do is try to do it right. The best resource I can find is there's a company called ReturnPath who do email certification. So what you do is you pay them an awful lot of money, and you go through some validation steps, which mostly involves doing all the things I just listed there. If you do that, they guarantee delivery for Hotmail, Yahoo, Rackspace, a few other people, not Gmail, specifically not Gmail. But they basically have a relationship with the ESPs. So if you are only concerned about sending to those small number of ESPs, the big commercial ones, and it's worth money, if you go through ReturnPath certification, it's worth it, and it's as close as I've found to a guarantee of our emails being delivered. But again, if you start sending spam, you just revoke your certification. But for there's no overarching protocol. There's no here's how we're going to fix email. It's broken and will always be broken.
What happens if you want to stop receiving email?
Just don't. That's even worse. What we do for that is we send our email from a different domain, effectively, and we point our MX records for those domains at a Fastmail account, which copes with high traffic. So the problem is it's actually quite quite easy to get the email in, and it's okay to process it, but it's harder than not doing it. So what's easier is we just send all our email to an inbox, and then we just process it as if it's IMAP messages. So rather than trying to deal with it on the fly, use prog files or whatnot to direct email to processes, let someone else cope with it, because then you don't have to worry about scaling. If you suddenly get millions of email addresses, you don't want to lose them, email messages, you don't want to lose them. Just send them somewhere else and then deal with them later. We don't run any of our own inbound servers. We just let someone else have them and just IMAP in.
Since it's so terrible, have you come across anything that tries to replace email, like a new protocol or anything that might actually stand a chance of getting off the ground?
WhatsApp, maybe? I mean, this like all the stuff that Facebook announced with bots and whatnot, that's trying to get this weird, I can't remember the name of it, there's a Chinese startup, or not a startup anymore, but it's like this weird walled garden of all of the internet inside a chat app where you buy things, and that's what Facebook are calling it. Yeah. There's nothing that replaces email, but what seems to be happening with mobile is people go notifications or the chat app things or yada yada. But the trouble there is I don't know Android at all, but certainly with Apple, you've gone from a decentralized system where you can annoy anyone, but it's not too terrible, to a vastly centralized system where if you piss off Apple, you're done. So we use notifications, we get traffic from notifications, but our bread and butter remains email. That could just be our market. Our market tends to be slightly older. It's not teenagers. Maybe teenagers don't. There's always the story in The Guardian. Teenagers don't do email. Teenagers are abandoning Facebook, etc. We don't see that, but we are not getting teenagers.
Do you have a preference for third-party providers, or would you recommend?
We did use Mandrill. No, we did, just because it was the easiest to set up. Actually still are running, but it's a paid service now. Almost all of them give you really good metrics out of the box, and all of them are worth, for most people, they're worth what you'll pay. They'll charge X pence per 1,000 message or whatnot. It's just a question of, they've all got slightly different schemes. The best way of judging it is a spreadsheet which says we expect to send X thousand emails a month, and we need this amount of deliverability, say, and just work out how much money it will cost you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you to both our speakers. Thank you all for coming along. And thank you to our sponsors, Skyscanner, Informatics Venture and Cultivate. We'll be back next month on May the 11th, same place, same time. I won't be here, Marius won't be here. There'll be new faces standing in front of them. They don't know what they're doing, so be kind to them. And that's it. No, I won't see you next month.
Except for, could you give us a hand tidying up, please?
Oh yes. Last thing is, for those who are new, we generally go to the pub and I get the choice. So this month it's going to be, I forgot the bloody name, the Pear Tree, which is 400 meters that way. And that's it. Bye for now.
Douglas.
Sorry? We've got one more. The lawyer challenge. Yeah.
Email stuff, and it's running. I just gone, can't we just replace this protocol now, please?
Right, because I've already got something.
Yeah.